Hey, what's up? This is Kev from the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast, and you're listening to the BS Podcast Network. Enjoy the show.
In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today is Thursday, March 6th, and this is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. I have with me Sal Lito. What's going on, Sal?
What's going on, Kev?
Not too much. You know, I tried so hard to get you off this podcast, and that just failed miserably several times. So, I think
you've been failing at that for pretty much 100 episodes. I'm going to be here unless I end up in Disney World, which sometimes happens. Other than that, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be your worst nightmare.
Yeah, I can't get rid of you. So my next goal is to get rid of Steve. So he's out tonight. He is not here. We are going to proceed without him, and hopefully my plan to get at least one of you off this pod will stick. But we do have a good guest, Sal. We have a replacement. I don't know that he's going to fill Steve's wimpy shoes, but he's going to do a lot better, so that's good. Tonight
I'm pretty sure he broke right through those shoes.
Yeah.
Clearly much better than Steve.
Is there like replacement pay here? I mean, like, am I looking at like sitting on millions here? Or
Yeah,
you could have double what Steve gets.
That's right. You get so we told if you the last couple of shows that we did prior to our 100th episode, which was the last one, but we had Scott Fish on. Obviously, everyone knows Scott Fish, and Sal was out. So I was trying to tell people that I was replacing. You know, we had a whole joke thing where Scott was replacing Sal. It was good. It was great. It was working out. And then Sal came back. So I did tell Scott that he could have double what Sal made, which again is nothing. So you were entitled now just to double what Steve makes.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know, we have Nick Whalen on the podcast tonight. Nick is well known for, I think, the Devy Report. I think most people who play fantasy football will probably know Nick from the Devy Report, but he's also a writer for DLF. I heard on the Dynasty Trade Calculator that you podcast that you got promoted. They made you a senior writer, I think.
No, that's not accurate. I'm not a senior writer, but they just assumed I was. So I was like, that's cool. I'd like to be one. So.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, so I'm going to keep it going. So you're senior writer, Nick. Maybe if we keep saying it, it'll happen, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, just they'll feel guilty and they'll just do it.
So DynastyLeagueFootball.com, you can check out Nick's stuff there. He's also co-host of the DLF Dynasty podcast and the DLF Filmetrics podcast. Do you sleep at all, or?
I don't. You know what's funny is people are like, "Hey, what do you do in your spare time?" And I have a full-time job, and then I do all of this stuff, and then I work out, and literally that's about it.
Yeah, that sounds about right with all the things that you're doing. So let's really quickly tell people how you got into the madness. Obviously, they can go read your bio at thedevyreport.com, but give us the brief history of how you started playing fantasy football, what your love and passion for football is, and how that translated to what you do now.
Yeah, I'll try to make that as concise as possible. The sickness started when I was super young. I mean, when people would wake up on Saturday mornings, they would watch, cartoons or something. I would watch taped NFL drafts. Like, that's just how I was wired. I was always football all the time. I'm hanging around high school practice fields when I'm 6, just bugging the guys. It's just always been in my blood. And then growing up, I got into college coaching. So I was a student assistant coach at Western Kentucky, at Carthage. I did internships at Montana State and Drake. I ended up getting out of college coaching and then, try to go a different path in life. That was fun doing all that kind of stuff. And I was just writing on some message boards, and I did a little fantasy writing. I did some at Dynasty Rogues that's no longer in existence, and I did a little bit at Matt Waldman's RSP, and then all of a sudden Ryan McDowell came knocking and said, "Hey, do you want to come write at Dynasty League Football?" And I'll be completely honest. I mean, as you can tell from my Devy Report, I do all of my own work. I don't read other people's stuff and just take theirs. So I didn't even hear of DynastyLeagueFootball.com, just to be completely honest with you. I was like, oh, cool. And then I'm like, oh, they're legit. Like, this is sweet. So started writing for them, and it's been, I don't know, 3.5 years, and it's been awesome.
That's great, man. So I feel like I've heard that story a lot of times. Ryan McDowell just called me up, and now I'm a writer for DLF. It seems like he's pretty good at picking some talent. So,
well, honestly, he's probably one of the most, and I know people know him. He is a better person than he is a football, analyst, but he's so creative and thinks of great ideas and organization and time. I don't know how he does it. I mean, he has kids and a wife, and he's got all this stuff going on, and I think he's a fantastic guy. So I know people think he's awesome. He's even better than what you think.
Yeah, it seems like that seems to be the common thread when people talk about Ryan. And you and I are both in this Kitchen Cinco League, which is obviously one of Ryan's. We could talk about that a little bit, although we're kind of we got ourselves in trouble, I guess, a little bit trying to monopolize, so to speak, the Devy market there. So, but Ryan seems like a great guy and puts on some great leagues. So that's for sure. I guess one of the questions I have. So you love college football, obviously. You just said that. So what made you want to get into writing the Devy Report and start that and really put that kind of work in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, basically, I just always have this coach aspect when I look at film. I look at all of the fundamentals. That's the stuff that's important to me. And my first Dynasty League that I ever joined was a league that had the rookie draft before the NFL draft. So it was completely on your evaluation and your skills, because most people the NFL draft went like this, and then I'll draft my guys. And I started being really successful at that. I mean, and this is like the humble brag part, but you remember that class with McFadden and Jonathan Stewart and Rashard Mendenhall was like the running back class, right? This is before. Wow. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I had some shares there. That didn't work out too well. So this is my first league, and we drafted before the NFL draft, and I had the 4th pick. And, so those 3 went first, McFadden, then Jonathan Stewart, then Mendenhall. And, in that class, you still have Chris Johnson, and so the combine, everyone saw that number and was excited. And there's still Felix Jones. And I went with Matt Forte. People were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just really like his film at Tulane. I really like what I see there. And that one worked out well. And, just to prove that it's not a fluke, I had the next pick, and I didn't take Chris Johnson or Felix Jones. I took Jamal Charles. That worked out really well. Now, again, they don't always work out like that. Don't get me wrong. But, I always put in that time. And me doing that, after that, had more owners in that league being like, hey, what do you think about this? And so it just kind of evolved. And then when I started at DLF, I'm crazy into doing that college evaluation because of that. And I got started into Devy leagues. And one of the guys there, Matt Caraccio, said, hey, man, all the work you put in, you should just make a report. I'm sure people would like to read it and stuff. And I'm like, okay, sure, I can do that. And, and I don't go anything halfway. So, the first one's 104 pages. I just crunching in all of my time and making this. And, it went out pretty well. And then, the next year I make it because more people are asking, and it's 144 pages, I'm like, okay, it's coming together. And then this year was 178 pages, it just keeps getting bigger, and more people, are thankful for it. And basically I'm just taking my time, and I'm saving people all that time. They don't have to do all the work. I just do it for them. You can still form your own opinions, but you don't have to look at stats and sizes and injuries and transfers, and you already get a baseline in.
Cool. So, Nick, it's great to have you on here, because we started out, basically, our podcast started out as, redraft, and most of the people we dealt with redraft, and we've transitioned nicely into some dynasty leagues, and now getting into Devy. A lot of our listeners are probably hearing some of this stuff for the first time, and they might be really interested in getting involved in these type of leagues. More and more you want to get deeper into the fantasy. So Steve's not with us, so I'm going to ask the questions that Steve had on the agenda for you tonight. So the first question he had up was, how much film study and man hours go into doing a Devy Report on a typical year? Oh,
that's a sad question to answer, to be honest with you. I mean, And actually, I had Matt Wallman on the DLF Dynasty podcast 2 nights ago, and we talked actually before it started. It's really unhealthy. I don't think people understand the amount of time you have to put in. I mean, that report, if I don't clock my hours, and it's kind of on purpose. I don't want to know. I say 500 to 600 hours. It's north of 600 hours that I put in. Because I'm not going to put my opinion on something if I don't really believe in it. I don't just do something for, shock value. That's not who I am. Like I legitimately need to believe in something to put it down. And so I need to watch as much film as I can. And it's not even just watching film, because if you watch a guy on one day, your mood could affect that. So, or who you watched before and after could affect that. So I watch guys, and then I'll let a few days go by. Then I'll watch them again, and I'll be like, okay, what did I write? Like, oh, I need to tweak this because I don't feel the same way. Like I continually tweak that. And as I said, it's unhealthy. Like I wake up early before work, and I grind out some film, and I do some typing stuff. I'll try to get workouts in, so I'll run and watch film, and I'll stop in my workout, and I'll type, and I'll go back and run again. I just do the same thing. I lunch hours after work, I sacrifice going and seeing friends and family, and I don't eat well, and I don't get all my workouts in. Like it's not healthy. Right now it's fun because I get to do podcasts, and then my work's done till, I got 6 months off till I have to grind away again. But it's a lot of hours, and honestly that's, I probably don't have to do all those hours, but I don't think I could respect myself if I didn't do quality stuff.
Now, when you're compiling a list like this, where are you pulling the names from? Are you just going to the top schools? Or are you going off of what you hear and other people talk about? What are the stats or the identifiers for the talent when you start to look them up that you use?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. So, incoming players, so high school guys, because I watch their tape. I look on, I look on Rivals, I look on Scout, I look on 24/7 Sports, and honestly, I just kind of go down the list because they already did that work for me. I'm not going to look at 1 and 2 star players. I don't have that much time because. Honestly, I'd look at about probably 40 running backs and 40 incoming wide receivers, and that covers 4 and 5 star guys right there. Current guys, I look at previous Devy reports, and I kind of can, I already have that huge list already made up. And then if there's guys that really are just trash, I just delete them out. You know what I mean? I don't want them included in the report. No one really needs to pay attention to them, so I just delete them. But guys that kind of pop up, I'll recognize them throughout the year through stats. One of my favorite websites, and I'll just give this away, is I like to look at CBS Sports. They have a really in-depth list of positional rankings. I don't agree with the rankings, but at least it gives you a bunch of names to look at. So, I know it's sick. Like I'll look at, 60 draft eligible wide receivers next year, and people are like, I don't need to do that for my fantasy leagues. I know, but I have to do it for my report. You know what I mean? So that's where I kind of get my list from.
Cool. So in a second, Kevin's going to ask you like 6 questions about this year's rookie class. But before we get into those guys, who's your biggest hit so far that you've come up with? A guy that maybe wasn't on anybody's radar. You founded him. You put him out there. And while you don't want to be like, hey, I'm taking all the credit for that, but on the inside, you're like, I tabbed that guy before anybody else. Yeah, I mean,
there's 2 of them that really stick out, and I'll name a few. But one's Corey Davis. I mean, Corey Davis right now is, the wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver 2. If people are wrong, he's really the wide receiver 1 in this year's class. But, I had him 5th overall in Devy rankings in January of 2015 in my first Devy report. So, I was sky high on him, and it's risky, small school, but I'm like, there's nothing I don't like about this guy. And honestly, one of the things I've been really focusing on the last few years has been work ethic. And you can tell when a player progresses in their game and they focus on their weaknesses and they get better. And that's something Corey Davis has done. So that's one hit that I think a lot of people will peg me for. I mean, if you look at my Twitter, Abby, it's a joke. I got married to him or whatever. But
what's your team name in Kitchen Cinco? What is that right now?
Oh, you have to go there. So I traded away my rookie money because I wasn't going to own Corey Davis. So it's I'll miss you, Corey. Everyone knows who it is. I feel like I just have to put it out there in case Corey ever sees my Kitchen Cinco. He's like, you don't own me. So,
but Nick, I thought we had something special.
I know. I have to do it or else they'll get mad at me. And another one's Cortland Sutton. I mean, Cortland Sutton last year, he flashed a little bit at SMU. Again, small school. I went on a limb, and he was my guy, and 6'4", 215, and he evolved his game, which is exactly what it is. In the end, we are guessing. We're projecting. we're hoping they're going to improve here. They're going to get bigger. They're going to get faster. They're going to develop route running or breaking tackles, things like that. And Sutton did that. And so those are the two guys I've been really lucky on, and had them really high, and they hit. If I had to name a few more names, Josh Doxson, I had him number 12 overall in January 2015. Nobody had him there. And so obviously he came and was a first-round pick a couple years later. Darius Geis, really well-known name in the Devy Report, Devy Leagues and the Devy Report. He was my top running back in his class, and he was my number 11 overall in 2015, and that's worked out pretty well. And to include a little sleeper in here, who maybe he'll hit, maybe he won't. But Demarie Crockett, he was my number 9 running back last year in his class, so that's not super high, right? But 24/7 Sports had him 43rd, and he had 1,000 yards in SEC last year at Missouri and had a pretty good yards per carry. So that's one guy I'm projecting that I think he's going to progress and do pretty well. He's 5'11", about 220, and you want to think about a comp, think of like a Frank Gore type. That's kind of what Crockett is.
Cool. So, I mean, hearing it, you hit on guys like Forte and Charles early on. You probably don't have too many guys that you missed on, but is there someone, you propped up there maybe a little too high? You're like, you didn't want to claim him after he flopped?
Well, Sal, you give me way too much credit, man. I've missed on a lot of guys. In that league, actually, I was a big DeLone Carter fan. Do you remember DeLone Carter from Syracuse? I was like,
I'm a Syracuse guy. I follow Syracuse. So.
I was like, I'll get him late, and it'll work out, and that didn't work out. But in terms of like the Devy Report, because I think that's kind of where you're asking, I missed on Derunya Wilson. I thought he was going to evolve more, and it didn't really happen. Last year's report, Mac Hollins, I thought he would do better at North Carolina. It just didn't come together for him. I still have a little bit of hope for him because he's big and athletic. Corey Clement, I had him high. And I don't know what happened to him. That's just weird. It's like he got less athletic the longer he was at Wisconsin. I don't know how that happens. Artavis Scott, I was a fan of him after his freshman year. That didn't work out. And then Devon Rockhead Johnson 2 years ago. Marshall, me and actually Matt Waldman had a really good talk about him last year. And he just had a really good size speed combo, and I thought it was actually unbelievable, the burst he had at 240 pounds, and then his shoulders, and just didn't really happen. He was on Carolina's practice squad a little bit this last year, and it just didn't happen. So there's plenty of misses in there. Nobody's perfect in this.
So obviously, as Sal mentioned, we've historically been a podcast dedicated to the redrafts, and we're sort of delving more into the dynasty, and now we're talking some Devy tonight with you because you are the expert. But obviously people can use the Devy Report for regular dynasty leagues too, right? They need to know who's coming out. So obviously, we took a look at your report from last year to sort of check out who's on the list for this year. So I wanted to ask you some questions about this incoming rookie class because obviously you have the knowledge base, so it doesn't change a ton, but. Let's start off with this particular class. Some people call it a top 4 tier. Some people call it a top 6 tier. I'm curious, what is it in your mind? Is it 6? Is it 4? Where does that first break happen?
And you asked me this question ahead of time, because I got the agenda. I mean, I kind of have 3 breaks here. So I have the top 4, and for me that's Corey Davis and McCaffrey, Fournette. And then you obviously have Dalvin Cook, Dalvin Cook's my top running back. I don't care about the combine. I'm an anti-combine guy because I'm a film guy. On film, I see the athlete. I don't need a tights and no footballs and pads to tell me if someone's really athletic or not, And then after that, there's Williams and Mixon, who people have in that top 6. But I think there's a break there because I still have question marks with those guys. And then after that, it's probably going to be an interesting tier. I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I have John Ross there because I like John Ross. He's been rising, and it has been a combine thing for me. He runs better routes than I gave him credit for initially. The injuries scare me. There's been a lot of knee injuries, but the routes and defenders fear his speed, which makes sense. So he runs hitches and comebacks really well and just eats yards. So he would be my next tier, along with all 3 tight ends. I really like those 3 tight ends, and I believe in them more than any other running back after that or any other wide receiver. Curious what you guys' thoughts are on that. That's my next tier. So you have the 4, then you have the 2, and then you have those 4. That's my top 10.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I like the 4. I've been vocal before. I'm not a mixing guy. But that's just a personal choice for his off-field stuff. I don't. He'll never be on a team for me. I can see the talent. I can see why people like him. But for me, I'm one of those guys that's going to avoid him for that. But I can see why he's.
Is he messing with your fantasy football locker room? Yeah, is he going to cancer the other guys?
Right? Yeah, no, absolutely. I just personal choice. I don't condone. I don't have any problem with anyone who wants him on their team. But for me, it's just I try to not have those guys that I don't personally respect on my teams. So to me, it's fantasy football has always been about having guys that you want to root for on your team, and those aren't guys that I want to root for. So
I want to root for guys that win me championships.
You can do that without having those guys, in my opinion. But anyway, but
cut Tariq Hill, everybody.
But beyond that, no, I think you're right, and I personally have right after those 6. I mean, talent wise, I go to the tight ends myself, and I hate saying that because I'm hoping that there's a chance I can get some value on those tight ends somewhere, but it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to because the after those guys, in my mind, it's so spread out. So everyone has different opinions on all the guys after that, but those tight ends are so consistent. And it looks like they're gonna fall into that back half of the first round and eat up those spaces. So.
You're gonna have to fight me for tight ends wherever we are, Kevin.
I'm aware your love for the tight ends is very well known on this program.
Well, and I think the problem too is that the next running back or the next wide receiver. There's such a big group there. You could get them at the end of the first, you could get them at the end of the second. It depends on your opinion in your draft. It's really, I think the NFL draft will clear some of that up, but I think it's going to be really interesting rookie drafts this year because there is depth. There's good depth this year, and not like that every year. So, I would rather take the tight ends because I think they're going to be a positional difference maker for you. When you look at the tight end landscape, Gates is gone, and some of these guys, Olsen's going to be, 32, and, Fleener, he didn't hit, and all these Ebron, he didn't really hit. All these guys didn't really fulfill his expectations. These 3 are going to walk in and be, I think, top 10 assets right away.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there is a little bit of a concern with the tight ends. The learning curve for them seems to be a little bit longer unless you're really that top tier. But these, those top 3 guys, Howard, Njoku, and blanking on the third name here, Engram, maybe.
Ingram's my top guy, so you better remember him.
Yeah, is he really over
yeah.
Howard and? Interesting.
He is the best receiving skill set. His ability to stem DBs on the top of his routes. He's better version of Jordan Reed, and we don't have to worry about concussions. So if he was a wide receiver, Kevin, here's a hot take for you. If he was a wide receiver, he'd be my number 2 wide receiver right now.
Really?
Wow,
that's impressive.
Mm-hmm. I really like his skill set for receiving ability. You know what? I don't care about blocking because we don't get points for that in fantasy football.
Absolutely. Is he going to be on the field enough to really make that pay off, though? That's the question.
That's the concern.
So, all right. So, look, I'm looking through the 2016 Devy Report, and 8 of the top 10 from the 16 report are eligible this year. 2 obviously went back to school. We'll talk about those in a little bit, but who out of that remaining group of 8 have you changed your opinion on? Have any gone way down or fallen off completely, and have any really skyrocketed? Obviously, you have Corey Davis at number 2 in that group, so you're still pretty high on him. But Fournette's at 3. I'm looking at Cook at 5. So McCaffrey at 8. Juju Smith-Schuster is probably the one that stands out the most. I'm guessing he's a little further down the list now. But give me a little insight on those top 8 that we had.
Yeah, so I think, for the one that changed the most, Juju would be the obvious one. But I think Juju's gotten enough hate at this point. We don't really need to dedicate anything on this podcast to him. The thing that worries me the most about Juju Smith-Schuster, or John Smith, it was his original name, is his maturity level. He's young, and I know that was a big thing for people. He did great things at age 17 in the Pac-12 and age 18 in the Pac-12, and he's going to be 19. He's 20 right now. He'll be 20 until, I think, the end of November of his rookie year. That's amazing. However, at his pro day, after he makes catches, he's doing dances and showing off and doing this and that. And I saw in film he was getting penalties and taunting guys and doing all this kind of stuff, and he was getting penalties. Now, it's okay to talk a little trash. I did a little bit of that back in my day. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it takes away from your team, if it gets penalties for you, if you're doing that on the biggest interview stage that you were going to be on in your pro day, I don't know what that says about you. That bothers me. I already knew he wasn't a good athlete. That bothered me. Injuries, he gets dinged up. So I'm not going to put a ton of time into Juju. He's just a lot further down on my list because I don't think his ceiling is as high as I originally had thought. But the
Plus
one guy I think that changed.
He's a USC receiver, so.
Oh well, if you read the 2017 Devy Report, I'm really high in the next USC wide receiver. So I'll leave that little teaser for everybody. But I think the guy that changed the most, and it's maybe not a huge positional ranking thing or overall ranking for me, is Christian McCaffrey, because he was hurt this last year. I don't think people realize that. He was dealing with injuries, and he didn't have Josh Garnett, who was a first-round guard that went to the 49ers, and he still averaged 0.3 more yards per carry after that magical year. I don't think people realize how good of an interior runner he is. For his size, I mean, he's Duke Johnson's size, and actually to digress by 20 minutes, Sal, I was very, very anti-Duke Johnson, and that one worked out for me. But they're the same size, and McCaffrey will run inside. He'll cut to go back inside. He's not afraid of contact, and you need that. You need that to be successful in the NFL. I mean, people know the vision and his receiving ability, but I think that mindset, that attitude to run inside is so important. Reggie Bush didn't have that. Alvin Kamara does not have that. Christian McCaffrey does.
Yeah, if he can stay away from injuries, I really like McCaffrey. He's like mechanical. He just looks like he's running a play on a video game. He does it. He runs it perfectly. It's just he's so focused. So I'd really like to see him avoid injury and land somewhere where he could be used right away. I like him a lot.
It's possible he lands on a team where he's already the best receiver on the team, so which is impressive. And then, like you said, Nick, the ability to run inside and is much better than I think he gets credit for as well. So, all right, so back to the 16 report. We'll talk a little bit about the two who went back to school, obviously for much different reasons. Nick Chubb, who's kind of like the he's the example in all of your Devy reports. So he's obviously been around for a while. He had the injury and set him back quite a bit. Kind of sad what happened to him. But so Nick Chubb and Cortland Sutton obviously decides to go back to school as well. So what are your thoughts on those guys as far as coming out next year? Do your opinions change on them going back to school, or are you still really high on these guys?
I'm still high on him. Chubb is knocked down a little bit because he did lose some explosiveness, and I think he lost confidence. I mean, he was a beast to bring down. The one thing that I like the most about Nick Chubb that people don't really point out, but if you see on film, he has such good instincts of when to hit a defender before they can hit him so he can gain yardage, and it doesn't hurt him as much as a runner. I mean, it's a really smart thing. I mean, Walter Payton was really good at that, and there are a few others, but it's a really hidden trait that I think gets you hidden yardage, that saves your body, and can really do wonders for him. I didn't see this much this last year. Same with the explosiveness in his feet. Like, it just all wasn't there. And again, just like Tiger Woods or some of these other guys, are they ever going to get it back? I don't know, but I'm still going to hold out hope for him. And he's not, and then again, next year, he's not even my top running back. He was my top running back going into this year, pre-injury, but he's not even my top running back, but he's still in my top 5. I think I have him 3 or 4, if I remember correctly. So I still have him way up there, hoping he'll get that back, because if he does, he's a special player. And Cortland Sutton, moving on to him. People know my love affair for Cortland Sutton. He already evolved his game some. Kind of a funny side note, Cortland Sutton follows me on Twitter. That's really cool, actually. But we talk every once in a while because he knows I've hyped him up so much. I always tweeting about him, so he followed me. But I'm excited to see if he evolves his game even more and just becomes even more dominant. I mean, he was top 10 in NCAA in receiving yardage this last year at a very, very marked guy at SMU. I mean, who else does SMU have? And their quarterback play is not good. But he really did well. And people were mad at him because he had a press conference to say he was going back to school. And I want people to think about this. When's the last time you heard about SMU football?
Yeah,
I can't even remember, right?
Exactly,
I mean, still blanking. Who? I can't remember, right? I know Emmanuel Sanders went there. Now you can think of that, but like back, in that time, no one thinks of that. He brought attention to SMU football. He came back to make that program better. Now, again, was he going to be a high pick? I still think he would have been a solid pick. Maybe a second, early second, maybe a late first. He was getting pub from many big time, scouts and analysts out there. And he went back. And that says something, I think, about him as a person wanting to have his team get better and to get them some publicity. I mean, it's not it's not all about him. I think it's about the program. And if you listen to the press conference, it was about that. He wanted to accomplish something there, just like Corey Davis did. Corey Davis went back to school, and what did he do? They went, 11-1 at Western Michigan, and he got his coach a raise, and he went to Minnesota. So, it worked out. And I think if people want the next Brandon Marshall, they're going to go and get Cortland Sutton because he's going to be a good player.
All right, that's pretty good information. All right, so obviously, the trend in fantasy football lately, at least the one I'm seeing, is going more towards the super flex and or 2 quarterback leagues, putting a little bit more value on the quarterbacks. But this year's class is a little bit tough when you're talking about quarterbacks. In my mind, I don't see top end talent from any of them really. In my opinion, we have Deshaun Watson, you have Deshaun Kaiser, you have Mitchell Trubisky. We have Pat Mahomes and whoever else you want to throw in there that may or may not end up in first rounds. But what do you see out of these guys? Are any of these guys – look, let's be honest. I think they're all projects, right? I don't think any of them is ready to start day one. But do you see any of them becoming a top tier, or even top 15 quarterback in this league?
I like how you rephrased that at the end, because if we were going to say a top 8 quarterback, no. It would be, the percentage would be very low. And actually, I think I don't think Deshaun Watson can get there. Deshaun Watson, and again, this is a conversation actually I had today with some DLF writers. And quarterback's my position, by the way. So I've coached football for 8 years, and quarterback's the position I've always been with. So it's really, it's kind of my niche, I guess. But there are 3 different types of footballs that you throw, okay? So a 1 ball is a ball that you throw, me to you. There's no arc on it. We're 10 yards away. We're just slinging it back and forth. A 2 ball is the one that has a little bit of arc. It goes over the linebackers, maybe requires a little bit of touch. But you're still going to have something on it. You're not lofting it. You're throwing it with some zip, but it's got a little bit of loft. It gets over the line, things like that. A 3 ball is that deep ball. You're throwing that one, it's got quite a bit of arc, and you're trying to place it in areas. Deshaun Watson does not have a 2 ball because Deshaun Watson lacks arm strength. His 2 ball is like a 2.5 ball. And you're like, oh, what's the big deal with that? The more arc it has, the more time a DB has to react and get interceptions. What happened this last year? Lots of interceptions from Deshaun Watson. They can knock it down. It puts wide receivers in bad positions and they get hit. I don't think he has the arm strength to make all of the throws. I love Deshaun Watson's leadership. I love Deshaun Watson's his moxie in those 2 national championship games. Last year, think about it. No Mike Williams, no Deion Kane, and he still almost beat Alabama. This year came from behind and beat them. That was pretty awesome. But that doesn't make him a great fantasy football quarterback. Can he run? Sure. But I don't see him being able to go down the field. His ceiling is like Andy Dalton. That's kind of what I see. He can run a little bit, but that's about what you're looking at. He's not going to run a ton in the NFL. So I'm not high on him. My top quarterback of those is Trubisky because I think and I know this sounds crazy, I think he has the highest floor because I liked what I saw consistent from him. I know he only started 1 year, but his arm placed the ball in good slots. I saw him make a couple different reads. He would go from 1 to 2. He wouldn't go from 1 to 2 to 3, but he'd go from 1 to 2. I like the arm strength. I liked his feet. And with me, I know this sounds weird. I'm not trying to be, Rex Ryan here, but feet are a big thing for me with quarterbacks. You have to have them underneath you and how you move through the pocket. And I know you guys in New York, you like that one, but it's a big thing for me. And if you don't have them underneath you, Brady has them underneath him, Manning has them underneath him. And you don't have to be a good athlete, but that's your base. Everything from your throw starts with that. Jay Cutler has not good feet. Patrick Mahomes has terrible feet. Okay. So that's important to me. And Trubisky has good feet. Kaiser is super inconsistent. Kaiser could be the best quarterback in this class, and he could be a top 8 quarterback in the NFL, or he could be out of the league in 4 years. He is so inconsistent with a good throw, and then it's low, and then it's way outside. He's all over the place. There's a reason Notre Dame wasn't good this year, and he's a big reason for that, in my opinion. He's going to need so much development. So if you're asking me if I want to invest in any of these quarterbacks, heck no. Patrick Mahomes is I'm avoiding completely. I don't want to deal with that footwork and that freelancing and throwing off the back foot. I don't care how much arm talent he has. You're not going to fix that footwork. It's not going to just, all of a sudden he becomes a very mechanical and system quarterback. No, he's going to just be a gunslinger forever, and that's not what I want. If I want to invest in a quarterback, I'm going to trade for picks next year because next year's class I like a lot.
Yeah, how about Kaiser? If you ask his college coach, he'll let you know he's not ready to play in the NFL, huh? That was brutal. Anybody see that come out?
Yeah.
I tell you what, he didn't do many favors for future players there. You don't do that publicly.
Yeah, that was brutal. I mean, how do you expect guys to want to come there and put their trust in you that you're going to, get them prepared for the NFL and talk them up for the NFL and talk them up to scouts? That was a brutal situation.
Brian Kelly's going downhill. He won't be there after next year, I don't think.
All right, so really quickly, we'll get to those quarterbacks that you just mentioned in a couple of seconds, the ones coming up next year, because I am curious to hear your thoughts on those. But really quickly, for this year, for rookie drafts and whatnot, give us some guys that you might target in the third, fourth round, those later round guys, the maybe not well-known prospects that you think you could get hit on. So, and we're obviously going to write this down, and we're going to have everyone send you hate mail when you're wrong. So.
Don't worry, I get a lot of that anyway. People will dig up tweets and like, oh, what about this one? And I'm like, you know what, man? Come
Fantasy
on.
Twitter, man.
Yeah, that's how it is. So, I mean, I don't know if he gets to the third round, but I'm a big fan of Wayne Gallman. I think that he has tremendous feet for a guy his size and his effort. So I don't know if he's going to make it to the third, but if he does, you grab him right away. Clemson had a really bad offensive line. I was on the DFS Power Hour, and they have the PFF guys, and they just rip off stats all the time. And I'm not a stats guy because I'm a film guy, but they said Clemson was one of the worst offensive lines last year, and he still performed really well. And that says a lot about Wayne Gallman. Josh Malone has always been one of my favorite guys. I don't know if he makes it around 3. I think he's going to be borderline there. And he's got the size. He's got the athletic ability and made tons of big plays at Tennessee. But this guy named Josh Dobbs is terrible. People don't realize this. He's a bad quarterback. The last time a Tennessee wide receiver worked out, or for the hype from college, I mean, Marquez North and all these, it doesn't happen. There's a reason. I think Tennessee doesn't develop well there. But two, I know for sure later on, guys, I really like Chad Hansen from Cal. He's got so much just dog in him. And dog to me is the guy that's going to fight. He's going to fight and win that jump ball, and he's going to chalk trash to you after he scores a touchdown, and he's got great sideline awareness. He doesn't have a full route tree yet. Okay, so what? He'll develop that. But right now, for what he does, great hands, red zone guy, sideline guy, he can catch a deep ball. Hey, I'm good with Chad Hansen for a risk for a third or fourth round because I already know he already has an elite skill set with those hands, and we'll see what else can come from that. The other guy, it's going to be a fourth round guy for sure. Elijah McGuire has been a guy I've always been kind of high on in my Devy reports. Small school, Louisiana Lafayette. He had 1,000 yards the last 3 years rushing. Yards per carry has been down. I think it was like 4.9 this last year. It's continually went down. But good enough athlete, 215. He's got really good hands, and I know people really like that. That's why they like McCaffrey, right? That's why they like Alvin Kamara, all this stuff. You can get this guy in the fourth round, and he could be the same type of player. So good moves. He makes guys miss. He made so many big plays, and I know he had some shoulder injuries and some other things happened for him. So if you want to take a chance on a fourth-round guy that, again, in your PPR leagues can catch the ball in the backfield, Elijah McGuire is your guy.
Awesome. All right. So I was going to ask you this a little later, but you mentioned a small school guy here, so I'm gonna get into it right now. How much stock do you put into the school and the competition level and that kind of stuff when you're going into your report and you're evaluating these players? Obviously, you're very big on Corey Davis, so that doesn't affect you too much on him. But is he just a special talent, and you still weigh that, or how do you focus on that?
And that's a good question. That's a debate that I have all the time with people because there's some people he didn't play in the SEC. It doesn't matter. Well, let's look at Antonio Brown and Chris Johnson and all these guys that didn't play at big schools and they panned out. I know. There's always an outlier, but to me, I don't focus on school. School where you played. I mean, it used to be a big thing for me, Kevin, to be honest, but it's not as much anymore. I mean, it's probably maybe 5% of my eval. I focus on two things: skill sets. I want to see and identify different traits and make sure that they do that. Like, for instance, Corey Davis, can he break a press? Okay, how does he do in his routes? And again, all of his routes. How does he use his hands? Is he a hands catcher? How is his burst out of cuts? How is he, when he catches the ball, does he transition into a runner well? Is he a hands catcher? Is he aggressive when there's defenders around him? Can he rise up over guys? All those things I care about. And I don't care about him if he does it one time. I want to see them do that 5, 8, 10 times. Then I know it's a repeated thing and it's something that is in their skill set. I mean, if we focused on just one time doing it, then David Tyree would be, the GOAT, you know what I mean? But he's not.
Don't bring up Tyree. I'm a Pats fan. Come on.
My fault. So, hey, I love Brady. So there you go. But you have to see them do that repeatedly. So that matters to me. And the other thing is athletic ability. You can see that on tape. I don't care if you're running by a guy and you're playing, D3, or running by a guy and you're playing the SEC. You run by a guy, and you can tell that athleticism. So those are the two things that I really care about more than competition, because yes, does competition matter? Sure, eventually it does. But if I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to look at anybody earlier you mentioned it, I'm not going to worry about anybody at USC because they all flopped. Well, is it the same coaching staff? It's not. So what is the same factor? I think we have those biases, and it really affects our fantasy teams, and we need to kind of put that out there. And again, sorry to challenge you, Kevin, but same thing with is he a good person or not? Sal kind of mentions we want fantasy points. That's what we want. Now, is there a risk they do it again? I mean, I'll give you that. He might do it again, and something might happen. And Josh Gordon or Martavis Bryant, etc. But some of those guys won people championships, and that's kind of what we're focused on.
Sure. But you did mention that, can Corey Davis get off the press is one of the things that you look at. But you're looking at, the competition of the cornerbacks that he's playing aren't pressing quite as hard as some of the guys that he's going to face in the NFL. So that must weigh a little bit when you do look at that, right?
Yeah, it does some, but I want to see his technique as he does it. Does he only have one press break, technique that he does, or does he have multiple? And then someone like Corey Davis, then I can watch him play against Wisconsin and Purdue and Ohio State and Michigan State. And, I mean, honestly, one of the things I like the most about Corey Davis was his freshman year. He's playing against Michigan State. He's obviously not at his athletic peak or his physical peak, or his skill set peak. And he's playing against Darqueze Dennard and who's the other one? Trey Waynes. 2 first-round pick corners. What does he do that game? Not a ton, but I think he gets maybe 80 to 100 yards there behind a lot. He got a ton of targets, but he kept trying. He put in so much effort, and you could see little bits and pieces of his game. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, Corey Davis. Let's see this guy. And then I saw his sophomore year happen, and then I'm like, okay, this guy works hard, and he wants to do it. So, you can focus a little bit on that competition level, but I want to see the skill set. Now, again, if you do the skill set, Kevin, against the top competition, then that's a big boost as well. I'll give you that.
Sure. All right, so let's get into now. Now we'll switch modes a little bit. We'll get into the true Devy for those of you who have Devy in your league. You're picking some college players this year that aren't draft eligible and aren't coming out. You talked a little bit about the quarterbacks and waiting on them for the next year because those are the guys. So I'm assuming you're talking about Rosen and Darnold to start off with, but are there, tell me a little bit about those guys, and then is there anyone else that you're really focusing on?
Well, I mean, Darnold's not draft eligible next year, because he was only true freshman this last year. But with those two guys, I mean, Rosen's I just love Rosen's film. This last year wasn't as good. He pressed. He tried to do too much, which happens. Leonard Fournette did that against Alabama. He was trying to be too much and not sticking with the play and trying to make a big play all the time. Joe Mixon does that too. So, hopefully he learns from that a little bit. But his feet, again, his feet are awesome. He resets really well. I like that. So when you do a pump fake or a play action, to be able to get that ball in a position to reset and throw, he does that really well. I like his arm strength. I like his accuracy. He's in complete control all the time, shifts and motions and snapping the ball. And, he just feels under control, and I like that. There's a confidence about him. So Rosen's my number one by a wide margin. My number 2 is not Sam Darnold. My number 2, and again, if this guy I watched Brian Hill film the other day, okay? Who says that, by the way? I was watching some Brian Hill film. Anyways, I was. Running back, Wyoming. Interesting guy to watch, by the way. So I'm watching Brian Hill film, and again, so I've already did the Devy Report. This is me doing 2017 work. And I cannot stop loving watching Josh Allen throw the football, quarterback, Wyoming. Have you guys seen him throw the ball?
I can honestly say I have not.
I have not as well.
Okay, if you want to see the strongest arm I think I've ever seen, this is even NFL-wise, but for sure, I mean, hands down, college guy, arm strength. Josh Allen has the strongest arm I've ever seen. And he's like 6'6", 6'7". He's athletic too, but man, this guy's got a cannon. Now, does he take way too many chances? Yeah, he does. He's got a little Cutler, Favre in him, but part of it is because he can fit the ball in anywhere. He's just willing to sling it. And there's balls you're like, man, how did he get that in there? It's because he's got tremendous arm strength. So he's my number 2, and that's a lot of potential. He's got the arm. He puts up great numbers. He can run a little bit. There's a lot of turnovers, but I think he could develop into something awesome. And then Darnold's my 3. Darnold, he's a really cool customer in the pocket. It's almost odd. Like there's guys all around him. He's just like, whatever. Kind of like Russell Wilson. You're like, don't worry. There's a guy right there. I'll step up here and I'll just deliver the ball. Solid arm, really good touch. I like his 2-ball. That 2-ball I was talking about. He's got really good touch to get that over a linebacker and fit that into spots. And he's patient to let those guys get open. I like that. I want him to set his feet more and reset his feet. He doesn't do that all the time. Maybe he'll wait off a back foot. And, again, that's more time that a ball's in the air. I don't like that. And also his accuracy down the field, too. I mean, there's times when it's good, and there's times when his wide receivers bail them out. Now, again, Juju Smith-Schuster's there. I also like Darius Rodgers, too. Darius Rodgers is a solid wide receiver that, he's got a little bit of that dog in him. Like, he's going to fight for the ball. So, I want to see Sam Darnold without some great weapons and to see, if it's him or if it's, maybe they helped him out a little bit. I think he'll be a solid quarterback, but I don't know if he has the same potential that those other 2 have right now or ceiling, but I think he's got a pretty good floor. And
cool, so
and actually, real quick, if I throw in another guy, I actually am a fan of Luke Falk. I like Luke Falk a little bit, and in my report, Kevin, I don't know if you got to that page or not. It's really far down there. I don't know if you got to page like 160.
I see it right now. I'm looking at it right now. Your NFL comp. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. My comp is Tom Brady, and it's not. And again, comping someone to Tom Brady is, I'm not saying he's going to win all these championships. I like how he's really in control. He knows his offensive system well. He picks apart defenses and gives what they give him. That's what Brady does. Brady doesn't force something. That guy's open. I know this guy's open. He does this. He moves in the pocket well. Washington State wide receivers drop tons of passes. If they would catch all of the passes that hit them in the hands, they would have won so many more games this year, I'm telling you. So Falk's kind of like a marked guy, and I like him more than the average person does. I didn't think I was because, this air raid offense of Mike Leach, but actually he grew on me.
Yeah, so sorry I stepped on you a little bit there, Nick.
Okay.
It's just Kevin's been talking so long, I want to talk again. I got kind of lonely over here.
I'm doing that on purpose.
Me and you, Sal, for like 10 minutes. Let's do this, man. What do you want?
Yeah, you know what? Like you kind of answered this question already. So you have Barkley from Penn State as your number 1 running back on the 2017 Devy Report, and we all know the history of running backs coming out of Penn State are colossal flops in the NFL. I think Franco Harris might have been the last successful running back that came out of Penn State.
I'm a Bears fan, Sal, so the Curtis Enos one, that one hurt too.
Yeah, I mean, usually you hear linebackers from Penn State, you get excited, not usually running back. So you kind of express you used to put a little bit more stock in that. You don't put that much stock in that any longer. So tell people about Barkley, though, and is this a guy they should pay up for this year in Devy and try to get their hands on?
Oh my gosh, yeah, Sal. So yeah, the school I don't care about at all. But Barkley's my number 1 running back, and if I were to comp or to put him in a group, he's in my Zeke Elliott and Todd Gurley group coming out of college. He's that special. He's better than this class. Right? If he came out in this class, he'd be my number 1 guy because he does everything. And again, as I talked about this, the hardest part about Devy and doing my report is that I don't know when guys are going to get bigger or faster or stronger. And Barkley got added weight. And he got faster and quicker. I was like, oh, boy, this is exciting because I liked him last year. And then after this film of 2016, I was like, oh, boy. And again, people are really going to like Darius Geis from LSU, and for a good reason. He's strong, he's fast. But Barkley sets up defenders. He knows how to beat them. He has those instincts, and he makes these humongous plays just on cuts and spins and determination that, Geis just doesn't really have. Barkley has good hands. And the quickness and vision, too. I think he bounces outside a little bit more than I would like. But, man, his just cutting ability is just special. I mean, if the first guy brings him down, he probably should, take his gloves off, give him to the trainer to save, put him on his wall, and remember, hey, I tackled him. I was the first guy there because he might be the only guy to ever do it. So, I mean, it's just he has a really, really good skill set, and especially for fantasy football with catching the ball and converting. I mean, he's going to be there all 3 downs all the time, and that's super valuable. If I had to comp him, he'd be the NFL version of Le'Veon Bell, or I think I have him in the report. It's like a LaDainian Tomlinson, where there's a guy they're just really good at cutting, and they can catch the ball and do everything. I'm really, really, really impressed with Barkley. If you have not seen him, you really need to.
All right, so Barkley's a guy that's obviously number 1. He's going to be a big hit in the NFL, according to you. But there's obviously a lot of guys that are outside your top 10 that I'm sure will land in good spots, or like you said, they make it bigger, they make it stronger, they make it faster. Who's a guy from let's go with each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Who are a guy from each that's outside your top 10 or a little further down on your list that you would pound the table for a little bit if you had to.
In top 10, I would say overall top 10 right now. That's what I would say. Sure. Not in each of their classes. The one I would pound the table for right now, and actually I'll give you 2 running backs that are going to be draft eligible next year that I have outside of the top 10 overall running backs. One's Raleigh Williams III, running back from Arkansas. He had a really good year last year. His freshman year, he had a serious neck injury, almost stopped playing football. But, man, this guy is just rock solid. I mean, you're looking at like 5'11", 225, probably 222, somewhere in there. And he really gives me this Mark Ingram feel to him where guys are going to in college, guys are going to bounce off of him. He's not amazing fast, but he's got enough gear there to run away from people and get yardage. I mean, he's not going to run in the 4.4s. He's probably a mid 4.4 or 4.5 guy, can catch the ball, but he has really good feet for a big guy. That's something that's really important to me is your feet. You have to be able to make a guy miss or at least move enough where he only gets to half of your body. Then you can break that tackle. And Raleigh Williams does that. And he ran for a ton of yards in the SEC. I think it was like 5.3 yards per carry. At Arkansas doesn't have the best offensive line. Arkansas, they're going to run the ball, and he still did it, even against some top teams. So he's a guy I would keep an eye on. Another one, and I didn't write him down, but just getting excited and talking. I really like Wadley from Iowa. So Wadley is it's Akram Wadley. Sorry. If you want to think of a poor version of the Shady McCoy, maybe a better version of Theo Riddick, that's Wadley. And again, same thing with Barkley, maybe even better. This guy makes everybody miss. It's awesome. It's like Michigan. Jabril Peppers can't tackle this guy. He can spin and juke and knows how to read defenders' leverage against them and their momentum. It's unbelievable. He's probably not going to be an every down back. But in fantasy football, he's the guy that you would want to get in later rounds. So, I was talking about the Elijah McGuire. He's going to be the better version of that. He'll probably be a late second-round pick next year. But, man, this guy catches the ball. He can run. He can, make cuts, convert first downs. And he's tough. I mean, think of Iowa. Iowa's not going to be a soft team. They're going to, the running back's going to get the ball there. And he got a ton of touches, and he did really well. So he's a guy that I like there as well. In terms of receiver, Carlos Strickland is a guy that's so off the radar. And I'll tell you why. He went to Cal, and he redshirted. And then he transferred to Kansas State. Okay, he transferred to be closer to his ailing grandfather. Okay, he's from, I think, North Texas. So he hasn't played at all. He's draft eligible next year. He's in my top 10 for his class outside of the top 10 overall. No stats in college. Why? He's 6'4", 200. He moves really well for a 6'4" guy. He can high point the football. He's got really good burst. And I believe in him. I think he's got what it takes with 0 college stats. So if you want a guy that's way out there, Carlos Strickland's a guy, and he's high in my report. I might be Sal, you might be coming after me next year. Hey, remember when you were high on Carlos Strickland? He did nothing? Hey, sure, but to put your stock on a guy with no stats, I mean that's where I'm at with him. And then another one is going to be a true sophomore next year is Donnie Corley. He's a guy that, you want to talk about a really cool story here is Corley in his state championship game in high school, senior year. They're down, and they throw up a Hail Mary. And it's not even like a real Hail Mary. It's just a Hail Mary just to him. There's like him and like 3 defenders. Corley comes down with it in the end zone to win the game, to win the state championship, and then goes to Michigan State. Michigan State's a pretty good program, right? What does he do last year? He gets on the field. He produces really well. Now, is he a speed demon? No, he's not. Does he have size? Sure, he's like 6'2". I think he's like 186. Not a lot after the catch right now. But he's very fundamentally sound, and he improved his athleticism enough that he gets me excited. He gets me excited a little bit, and I hate to say this, everybody. He gets me excited a little bit like Corey Davis did, where I'm like, hey, he got better because he knew he had to get better. Now, I don't know if he's going to take the next step because Corey Davis was route running in speed and after the catch. I don't see that from Corley yet. But for a freshman year, you got my attention, Donnie Corley. So, he's a guy that I'm pretty excited on. And I guess those would be the guys. I mean, in terms of quarterbacks and tight ends, that's really hard for me to put a guy out there that, because, tight ends, not many of them put up stats. I guess I can just talk on like my top guy. I don't know. Is that fair?
Sure, yeah. Or you could just pick a college basketball player that'll turn into a tight end at some point and become a good prospect.
Oh man, how about what was that one? Adrian Robinson, right? Is that going to hurt some feelings? The Giants there.
No.
Really, if we were going to use, because I'm really a big fan of this tight end class this year. If we were going to use this class as a measurement, this guy would be the fourth best tight end, because those top three are really good this year. But man, everyone needs to check out Mark Andrews from Oklahoma. He's going to be a pretty darn good football player. He has the athleticism. He has the skill set. He's just not going to be special. You know, these three guys this year's class, I think, have the special aspect. So I think Mark Andrews, is a guy that you should check out. Now, again, if your leagues are hurting or your teams are hurting in terms of tight end, grab one this year, because there's really only two guys next year. The other one is the kid from Wisconsin, and I don't want to mispronounce his last name. It's out there, and he's not bad. He actually has an interesting story. He only has really 4 fingers on one hand, and he's a really good receiving tight end. It's pretty awesome. He's much better at the jump ball, a little bit more physical than Andrews is, but he doesn't have the same route running and athletic ability. So those are my two guys there.
Just so you know, Sal butchers names all the time, so you're welcome to throw names out there incorrectly. So,
I come from a mother who's never pronounced the name right. I'm pretty sure she doesn't get her own children's names right. So, it's all about how you're raised.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's funny.
Nick, we touched on earlier about when you start watching high school tape and you watch players from then. How early on do you start to watch a player? Like the guys that are going to be going into college next year as freshmen, are you already watching a film on them? And do you even go back even a year before that? What year in high school would you start watching?
I watched their junior tape, and then I watched their senior year tape. So I watch a lot of high school film. I know it sounds weird. You know, my favorite part about watching high school film, though, is not even the player. It's just to watch how terrible defenders are. Like, they have no clue. And you watch this guy, like, trying to run. He's not moving, or this guy just burrows. Like, you're like, oh, he's not going to score on this one. And then he does, because they're just terrible. Like, that's probably the funnest part. Like, I really have to concentrate on not looking at how bad defenders are. But, yeah, I watch junior and senior year tape. I mean, I watch as much as I can. And normally you can get probably 10 to 15 minutes worth of film from a high school guy, and that's pretty good. Considering, I mean, they don't, how much are you going to get? I'm not at their games taping, you know what I mean? So probably 10 to 15 minutes, but I rewatch and I slow down and I stop. I mean, that's how you watch film. Like, I don't know if people realize that. I don't just watch like a highlight tape and like, that's how good this player is. Like, you stop it. And you try and picture what that player was thinking at that moment, and then you go another frame, and then you go another frame, or go back and rewatch it again. Like, that's kind of how you watch tape, especially if I can get my hands on coaches tape, like all 22. I don't know if you guys have ever watched that at NFL.com. Oh, I love that stuff. If you're a running back guy, you watch the end zone view, because you can watch the big uglies do their combinations up, and then you can see the running back do their reads, and are they pressing the hole enough? Are they cutting back too quickly? You can see all that stuff. So, even with the high school guys, I can get a really good feel for their vision by stopping and watching plays and then rewatching plays.
All right, so I'm going to ask you, you're going to have to do me a personal favor, right? So I have a kid, he's a 2018 graduate. He's a top tight end recruit in the class. You could see him on any one of the list from first down to fifth. His name is Jeremy Ruckert. I've known this kid since he's 5. I was actually his goalie trainer when he was younger. He was a soccer goalie trainer. Always a full head height over every kid growing up. The parents made him wait a while to play football. He played flag football with my son and him are a year apart. They played flag football together. Once the kid got into high school, as a freshman in high school, 6'5", 6'6", 230. He led the county as a freshman in varsity receiving touchdowns. Helped lead the team to a Long Island championship run. Following year, county championship run again. The kid he's narrowed his 5 schools down to Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, which is by you, and actually he's narrowed it down to 6, and Florida State. So he's gotten offers from everywhere. So he's a top recruit. So I'm hoping that you could give me the real scoop on him. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do that for me tonight. I don't know that you've even ever heard of him. But so I'm just throwing that out there because I don't get too many chances to talk to a guy who does this kind of in-depth research. Let me know if this kid's the real deal.
How do I spell the last name?
Ruckert. Ruckert.
See, I thought there was a T. That's why I wanted to check that. Is he thinking of Oregon at all?
He's not. I would tell you that he's been back for visits multiple times to Ohio State and Michigan. Most people around this area think it's going to be one of those two schools. I know one of our good friends, Brandon DePau, who lives in Ohio and is a huge Ohio State fan, has been begging for me to try and talk into the guy's ear. But I like Michigan, so I've been leaning Michigan. So I'm thinking it's one of those two schools. Oregon has not really. If you go on, and you know this, obviously, it shows what schools they have interest in. It's those 5 or 6 schools, and the other ones he's pretty much eliminated. Nothing really West Coast, west of Notre Dame or Ohio State is he interested in.
Okay. Well, I only asked that because, I got from when I was in, the industry, I guess you call it, or the business. So I was at Western Kentucky, and I was there when Willie Taggart was there. And Willie Taggart has then just skyrocketed, and he's a great guy. He's the head coach at Oregon now. And then even when I was there, he went with Jim Harbaugh to Stanford. So I got to meet Jim Harbaugh and your Michigan guy there. So, it's funny, the more I get into this, the more I just kind of root for my guys. I don't really have teams anymore. I just root for, the guys that I know. I hope they do well.
Yeah, I'm really rooting for the kid. Obviously, New York is not a hotbed for football players. You even get more guys out of New Jersey than you do in New York, and especially Long Island. You just don't see too many kids get recruited at that level. And this is a guy who, obviously, since a freshman in high school, he was 6'5", 6'6" now, I think 230, and highly recruited. So, it's kind of like our hometown boy. Everybody's behind him, and we're just pulling for him. So, and I know that it's even at that kind of attention, it's still a long road ahead for a player like that. But, it's just a cool little story for me.
Yeah, no, I'll check it out. I'll email you. I'll let you know.
So we will. You're not going to email him. It's actually our ploy to have you back on the show. So you'll have to give us your report next time you come back on the show.
Will do.
All right. We talked about the positions to kind of load up on, but I'll ask you that again real quick before we wrap up. So this year, if I'm looking at rookies, I want to load up on tight ends and wide receivers. It seems like it seems to be the deal this year. And then next year, you're probably looking at running backs. A little bit more heavy since the tight end class is a little weaker, and there's probably some good wide receivers coming out next year too. So, but is that a fair statement, or do you see it any other way here?
You know what? The longer I stare at this class, there's a ton of wide receivers I like late. Like I like Carlos Henderson, I like Taywan Taylor, I like Josh Reynolds. I said Chan Hansen and Josh Malone. I mean, that's the guys off the top of my head. I mean, there's just a lot of guys. It's like, hey, if you can get second, third round rookie picks and just keep throwing them and get lotto tickets, man, you're going to get some of these guys are going to hit because there's some good football players. I don't think they're going to be superstars, but I think there's some good football players. I mean, Ishmael Zamora could be a superstar or it could be nothing. He's talented too. In terms of Devy's, yeah, you're about right. I mean, even running backs. I like running backs in this year's class. There's a ton of them there too. There's deep, and there's about 15 running backs I like this year's class. Future years, yeah, running back probably next year, not tight end. But I'm going to tell you what, wide receiver is coming, boys. Wide receiver next year, and I know this sounds crazy. Wide receiver in 2 years. Nick, in 2 years, those guys didn't even play college football yet. I know. This is all off of high school film. I know. But in 2 years, I'm telling you, that wide receiver class, whoo, boy, because they're all big and they can move in ways that big guys can't. They shouldn't move. So I'm excited.
All right, so trade up for your 2019 Devy picks right now. That's the way to go.
You got it.
All right, Nick, we always end the show with some finishing thoughts, and since you're our guest tonight, you're going to start off. So give us one finishing thought to end the program. Anything you want. Plug yourself. You can plug someone else. You can do. Well, definitely give us your, where they can find you, but give us a thought after that as well.
Yeah, I guess my finishing thought is just going to be a little bit more of just philosophical. I started. I mean, I'm just a guy. I mean, how did I get into college football? I started bugging coaches. And I kept bugging them, and I kept putting work in. I mean, this just doesn't happen. I've put thousands of hours into reading coaching books, into watching film, into watching schemes, and how to get better at something like that. And I just bugged coaches. And then how did I get in this industry? You got to grind away. Like, this is not. I mean, the Devy Report, as much as fun as it is, it's a grind, and I have to sacrifice a lot. And I think, if you want to do something, and it doesn't have to be a football thing, if you want to do something, you have to change your mind into, I'm going to do this. You have to make sacrifices for things that are important to you. I think that's really important. I think many people give up way too quickly on great ideas, or people tell them they can't do that. Guess what? You can do anything. I mean, this is a complete side story, and I apologize, but I started running, okay? Last March, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to consistently run. And I'm not phenomenal by any stretch of the imagination, but I can run, 6 miles at 6:45 pace now. That's pretty good. But that's because I consistently did it, and I was going to be regimented, and I was going to get it done, and no one was going to tell me it wasn't. When it's raining outside, I'm going to get it done. You have to be dedicated, almost crazy, to be awesome, and you guys can do that. So, I think part of it is, in this life, if you want to do something, if you have an idea, just go do it. Don't wait. No one's going to hand you anything. You have to push your sleeves up and just kind of get it done. So, sorry, it's a little bit of a soapbox. But my day job's a counselor, and I really believe in people, and I want people to accomplish great things. I love to read great work. I like to meet good people. If you read the report, my faith is important to me, so I just kind of want to help people as much as I can. Where you can find the report, I hope after this people like what I do. It's the DevyReport.com. If you want to buy past versions, you can do that too, and check my past work on Twitter. I'm @_Nick Whalen, and got a couple of podcasts I'm a part of at DLF, so you can check them out there. And if you just want to talk to me on Twitter, I'm pretty friendly. So
cool, Nick. If most of the people out there who listen obviously know me by now, I love your story. That's awesome. I'm a huge fan of the Backyard Banter podcast with Matt Harmon, and I actually was on episode 50. I did the 10-minute intro with him because I just DM'd him and asked him if I could come on and do it. So and hearing that stuff, as I'm 42 years old, I'm a little bit older than some of the other guys. I have a 15-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, and the advice that you just gave there, I'll play that for them because that's just wonderful life advice. So by all means, never apologize for that. You got some great stuff to give out to people, and I'm so happy you shared that with us. One of the great things about your report, which we didn't touch on, and I think everybody's looking for a little bit more action, a little bit more fantasy, is this is a great piece to have if you want to get into college football DFS. And it's a great guide for that, and will help you find those sleepers or those guys that everybody's not taking each week. So I think that's another great aspect that people should look for in this guide. And aside from that, Steve every week comes on and says you can find us at every social media platform: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Falafel House. You can find some of our work, and we have new stories coming out every day on falafelhouse.com. And I'm pretty sure I had something else to say, Kevin, but you know me, I ramble on, and I'm pretty sure I forgot what it was that I wanted to say beyond that. So on to you, pal.
That's all right. I would have looked stupid after what Nick said anyway. So I just want to thank Nick again for coming on. DevyReport.com. Definitely go and check that out. Not only is the report up there, but you got videos up there this year. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's great information. I highly recommend buying the past editions as well, particularly if you're not a Devy guy and you just want to check out some reports on the rookies, because there is a ton of information. And I will say, the other thing about the Devy Report that I like is that it's not written like your typical draft analysis. I mean, there's a lot of analysis in there, but you can actually hear the tone of Nick's thoughts on the guys when you're reading it, in my opinion, and that makes it a lot more entertaining than just your statistical information. So I appreciate that. Thanks again, Nick, for coming on. And normally I end the show by saying Steve hit the button, but since we've fired him and now replaced him with Nick, I'm going to say, Nick, can you hit the button?
Boom.